Welcome back. So in this section we are going to check whether there is any error or no error when we submit the form. Okay. Back here in the validation.php file, inside this private function, that is process validation results, I'm going to declare a variable here. Okay, and the variable name is going to be field result. Okay, and this field result is going to have a value of true. True means all there are no errors. Okay, that's the idea we are going to use here. So initially this variable field result is going to be true, and these are the places where we get errors, right? So if there is error in any of these rules here, we are going to turn this field result variable to false. Okay, so I'll copy this to all the other rules as well. Okay, now return field result. Okay, sorry. So the way this is going to work is by first we have the field result as true, and as I said, if it is true, it means there are no errors when we submit our form. Okay, but if there is any error, it's going to have false, right, instead of true. So there are no errors means none of this statement here, this field result false here, all these places, they are never going to assign false, right, value false to the field result, which means when we return field result at the end with no error, it's going to return this true. But if there is even error even in one of the field here, it's going to have the value of false. Okay, so that's the idea. So this process validation result we are actually calling here, right, in the form validation function. So I'm just going to do something like field result here. So we get true or false, right, in the field result. I had to do that here. Okay, if this field result is going to be false, then I'm going to have this private variable. Okay, that is this validation result, and I'm going to give this as 0. Okay, else if field result equal to true, okay, in this case we're going to give the same validation as 1. Okay, and remember this whole thing is inside this loop, which means each time this loop execute once, you're going to get the result for one particular field, right? So, and I'm storing this in an private variable validation result. Okay, so we had to have this private variable back here, private validation result. Okay, and it is an empty array. So what happens is every time this field results get updated, the 0 means there are error. Okay, because it's false for one field, and if it is 1, it means that field is there are no errors in that field. So this happens for one field, and let's say you have like 5 fields totally in your form. It means you're going to have this loop executed 5 times, and if there is no error in the entire form, you'll get 1 in 5 times in this array. Okay, it's going to be like 1 comma 1, it's going to repeat for 5 times. You're going to have 5 1 inside this array. But if that is not the case, even if one field is not satisfied, you're going to have at least 1 0. Okay, instead of 1 5, maybe you'll have 4 ones and 1 0. In that case, it is still not satisfied. That's the whole idea about this form validation. Okay, so we are going to create a function now a public function to check that. Okay, that is public function validation result. And now we are going to check if this variable is set, that is validation rules. Okay, because without this variable validation rules which we get here, right, without that none of this function should work. Okay, so that's the reason why we are giving validation rules every time. And then once again we are going to check for whether there is any form request, whether it is get or post. These are important because these are public functions which can access directly here in the front end. We had to do that only for these public functions, not for private. So that is the case, and then inside that I'm going to have a variable called result, and I'll make that as true. Okay, now I'm going to measure the length, okay, of this validation result. I want to know how many fields are there, right, in the validation. So I'm going to do something like count this validation results. Okay, and if you want to know that, we could just echo that, right? It's going to be length. So in order to access this, we just need to call this function, right, validation result here. We'll do that. So it's going to be something like this, validation result, right? So we execute this, and it works only when we submit the form. Okay, we got some error on line 25. Says undefined property validation result on line 25. Okay, I'm sorry, it should be result. Okay, there are no results. Function name, this variable name is result, not results. Okay, you can see here we got 3 because we are updating only for 3 fields, right? We have the rules here for only 3 fields, so validation happens for only the 3 fields, so we get the count as 3 length, right? Now what we could do with that is we'll use a for statement. Okay, for I equal to 0, I less than length. We are starting from 0, right? So we'll give less than length, then I plus plus, and inside that loop we are going to check if this validation results of I, remember, I is just a number. It starts from this starts from 0, so it's going to be validation results of 0. And sorry, it is a this is result, okay, not result. So in any of the case, if you say we have the count of, let's say we have the length of 3 now, right? So we have the data for 3 fields here, which means it will be like in zeros and ones. So array always starts from 0. So on the first loop execution, it's going to be validation result of 0, and it is going to give the data there, right? Wait, let me show you print this first for you guys so that you will have better understanding. Okay, that will be better thing to do for now. When we just submit this button, you can see here we got 0, 1 and 0 because first field name got error. It means we haven't entered anything. And then the third field email, this fourth field age also got error because we haven't entered anything. But this second field gender, by default it is selecting male, so we got 1 there, right? So let's see, I'm going to satisfy this field here by entering some data. And you can see here the first two fields are 1, so which means there are no errors in these two fields, but the third field got 0, which means there is an error. Okay, so this validation result is firing nice now. So what we had to do now is just use this as a condition. Okay, if this of I equal to 0, I mean if it encounters 0 in any of the loop, that is, you can see here we got 0 here in this field, right? In that case we are going to return this result. We are going to assign that result as false. Okay, so what is this result? This result is just a private variable in this function. You can see here at the start I gave result equal to true, and if it encounters 0 in this loop at any circumstances, then it's going to turn that to false. And if there are no errors, I mean if all these things, all the fields are 1, which means they are green, right? Which means you're never going to come to this statement. Okay, so just outside this for loop, all we had to do is just return, okay, this variable result. So I hope you guys got the idea, right? I'm giving this variable as true, and we are checking for whether there is any error in any field, right? If there is error, it's going to have 0. If there is no error, it's going to have 1. So we are going to check that, and if there is any field with 0, this variable will be, automatically given the value false. True will be overwritten by false. And finally we are returning the result, which means it will return true or false, right? With this validation result. So let me show you guys here. This is not the way we had to use this function. Okay, I'll say like if validation result, I mean if it is satisfied, then we'll say, we'll give some message something like success. Okay, or we can write any code for updating to database. It's totally up to you. Or we can transfer the control, right, using header function to some other page, or we'll give something like failed validation. So let's check this now. So when we run this file now, and when I submit, nothing happens. All we are getting here is error, right? So let's try to satisfy these fields here. And now when I submit, you can see here we get success message, right? So this is the place where we write all the code to process further, okay, after the validation is satisfied, whether it is for database or for transferring control to some other page. And that is all we need to build a complete validation class in PHP. And now all you have to do is just keep on adding the rules. You can see here I pasted some code for other controls as well. You can see here with the new, I have given something like type, email, integer, right? Before we did for these three, right? Now you can see here I have something called type integer, and this name is alphabet. So these are all functions. Okay, let me show that to you guys here, right? This is what we did, minimum length, maximum length. You can see here I'm giving another, we can just keep on adding to that new set of rules using else if. Okay, I'm given integer, and you can see here I wrote a function integer. And likewise alphabet, you can see here alphabet with spaces, alphanumeric, then alphanumeric alphabet first, and all these two lines are going to be same, only this function name differs, right? We just can keep on adding more and more rules to that. So let me show you guys all the rules here. You can see here integer, I'm using regular expression, then alphabet with spaces. So email, I'm using this filters, right? PHP inbuilt filters. Then even for URL, I'm using filters, and that is all you need to do. You can just keep on adding any number of rules you want, and if you want the source code, the complete source code of this validation.php class, along with this, I'll post a link in the description of the video, which is to my website, and once you follow that link, you will find the entire source code for this project. Okay, this complete code. I haven't typed all this because this project will, go forever if I'm going to type all this and show to you guys. So I'll just post the code for remaining features. Okay, I like to add one more nice feature to our form validation. We enter some data, and when we submit here, you can see here, when we have error, the values we entered are no more available in the fields, right? We should find a way to retain that value if the form validation is not a success. Okay, so let's add that feature to our form validation. Now back here in our validation class, I'm going to create a function, public function, and it's going to be form value. Okay, and it is going to have a argument field name, and it will have nothing by default. Okay, and then if this dot validation rules. Okay, and we keep giving this validation rules because we want to be sure that this form validation function is called. Only when this function is called, this validation rule is set, right? Which we receive from back here, right? So what I like to do is keep checking that for all the functions. Okay, and then inside that, I'm going to do two things. One is I'm going to check for request. Okay, form request, and I also want to check for form request with the field name. So field name is going to be any of the field names here, right, in our input box. So we're going to check whether that is set, and if it is set there, we can use the same method which we used here. Remember this validation result, right? So I'll copy this. This is where we're going to check whether the form validation happened, right? So I'll copy the same code from there and we'll paste that in here. Okay, but here we can't use this object, right, because we are calling within the class itself. So it's going to be this. Okay, and we'll do not. Okay, if this is not a success, that's the condition. Okay, if form validation is not a success, we are going to echo this request dot field name. So from where do we receive this field name? That we receive here in the argument. Okay, so let me show you guys how we can implement this in the front end. Okay, so back here, we'll start with this name. Okay, so this is going to be the text box with name, right, as the name. So in there, for values, I'm going to write a PHP code here. Okay, inside the value, and that is going to be we are just going to call that. Okay, so v is the object we created, right, in the start here, right, for our validation class. So v of the function name, that is form value, right? So I'm going to do that form value here, and it also takes, remember, field name as argument. So what is going to be the field name? That is exactly going to be this, right? Okay, I'm going to submit some values here. Okay, and you know what, okay, so and I try to update this form now. You can see here now the value got retained, right? So if you want to do that for other fields, all you have to do is, I already did that here, okay, in the front end. Let me show you guys. We have email, right? So email, I gave exactly the name, okay, here inside the value, right? So you can call this function again and again inside the value, okay? So that way, if the form is not updated, you're going to retain this value. So let's try to update this, okay? I'm going to give something like, okay, when we update the form now, you can see there are no values if the form validation is a success, okay? So only we are going to retain the value in the form if there is any error. You can see here now it got retained because all the other fields are empty. So I hope you guys like this feature as well, because this is pretty common in almost every form validation nowadays. So I hope I explained to you guys all the basic building blocks needed for building a very good PHP validation class, which you can reuse in any project you want. So guys, thanks for your time, and please subscribe to our channel and also like this video.